Good morning. I'm Craig Finnestead, one of the pastors here at the Water's Edge. Thank you so much for worshiping with us this morning. If you're new, especially want to thank you for being here this morning. We hope this isn't your last time with us. We'd love to have you come back and worship with us again. We know that you have skills and interests and passions and experiences that can make us a better church, and we would love to be a better church and have you help us with that. We'd love to have you be part of our family and share our lives with you as well. So thank you so much for being here. All those of you who are online watching, good morning wherever you are. Just put in the comment section how God is speaking to you this morning, and that's one of the ways that you can worship together. So we're in the middle of a sermon series called The Story of My Life. Last week I had said that many of you are so young that there's just a few pages in the front of your book that are already full, and the rest of the book is still to be written. So we're encouraging you to write a better story. There's some of us that a lot of the book has already been written. The book might be half written or it could be 2/3 written. But the point is we can celebrate what has been written so far. We can learn from that. We can have those sacred memories. And with this last half, we can still write a better story. With the last third, we can finish really strong. And that's what we're looking at doing here over these next 4 weeks. We're looking at some Old Testament people on Sunday mornings, and then the small groups, you're looking at some different stuff, but it's very similar material, so we're trying to merge those two together so you all have some great conversations in your small group. So last week was Jeremiah, this morning is Moses. So last time they made a movie about Moses, does anyone remember who played Moses? So it's Charlton Heston, and Charlton Heston probably would sell a lot of box office tickets, but I don't think it's a very accurate depiction of who Moses would be. The truth is, after 40 years in the desert with all these Israelite people who complained all the time, did you guys ever see the show Newhart, like back in the 80s? Bob Newhart was one of the innkeepers, and he didn't want to be at this inn. Like, this was the last thing he wanted to do, and the workers, the wife, the guests, they were just wearing him out. And by the end of the show, he just looked tired. I think Bob Newhart would be a much better depiction of Moses than Charlton Heston. So for 40 years, they trampled around the wilderness, and that would be more than enough to take it out of anybody. Imagine not having a home for 40 years. When they weren't raising hell about running out of food, they were raising it about not having enough water. They were always complaining about these supposed fish and vegetables that they got to eat in Egypt, and they wished that they could return there and that they could turn back time and remake this decision again. They didn't have fish and vegetables in Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt, but they remembered those days when they did. The moment that Moses turned his back on them, just for a little bit, they created this golden calf, and they decided that that was going to be their God instead of Yahweh. So one of them made a motion to excommunicate Moses and get rid of him. That was seconded immediately by thousands of people. This is what Moses had to deal with. And when he wasn't busy with all the above-mentioned stuff, he was basically praying to God that God would spare these people and persuade God not wipe them all out together as they actually probably deserved. So here's how it started in the book of Exodus. One day Moses was out, he was a shepherd, he was working for his father-in-law Jethro. Jethro would have been a priest, but he was also a landowner and he would have had animals as well. So Moses is out tending to the flock. He's on the base of Mount Sinai. Another word for that is the mountain of God. That's what it means in Hebrew. Now all of a sudden Moses, he saw something in the distance, and he saw this bush that looked like it was on fire. Now, as these great big flames were coming from this bush, he goes to this bush, and he finds that the bush actually is not burning. The bush is still really healthy. It's this flame that's coming up from the bush, and Moses is like, what in the heck is going on here? So we pick up the story in Exodus chapter 3, verse 4. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, Moses, Moses. Here I am, Moses replied. So I'm guessing that this would have been our story as well. We see this bush burning, but the bush is actually healthy. We go to check it out. God calls our name. Here I am, God. So it continues in verses 5 and 6. Do not come any closer, the Lord said. Now here, if you've ever wondered like where some people take off their shoes, or some traditions take off their shoes when they enter the sanctuary, here's where they get it from. Take off your sandals, for you're standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Now, the reason that he would have been afraid to look at God is this tradition that if you see God's face, you're going to vanish immediately. You'll die. No one had ever seen God's face up to this point. So Moses, he takes his shoes off. He covers his face. So then God and Moses have a talk. Actually, it's God who speaks to Moses. And it's this really like affirming talk for Moses until the very end. So God told Moses, I've seen the people in Egypt. These are your people. These are my people. I see their oppression. Don't think that I haven't heard their cries, because I have. I am aware of the slave drivers. I know the hardship that they're going through. In fact, I've actually come down to worship the people of Israel from Egypt and to send y'all out into your own spacious land, a land that's flowing with milk and honey. So Moses is like, okay, this is cool. We're going to get out of Egypt. So then in verse 10, God continues the speech to Moses. And he says, now go, for I am sending you Pharaoh. You must lead the people of Israel out of Egypt. And Moses is like, what? Like, you're God, you can do this. Why are you don't need me. Like, why are you calling me to lead these people out of Egypt when you're perfectly capable of doing it yourself? So what do you think Moses did when God said, all right, Moses, these people from Israel who are in Egypt, they need to be set free. You're the man. What do you think he did? He did the same thing that you do, and he did the same thing that I do. He came up with a bunch of excuses why he shouldn't be the one to do this. But Moses protested to God, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people out of Egypt? So you've done this before. Like, I'm looking at a bunch of Moseses right now. When I look in the mirror, I look at a Moses. There's been times that God has asked me to do things, and I came up with a bunch of excuses. So, like, here's how it works. Like, say if you're in, like, middle school or high school, which a lot of you are, you're going to be at lunch tomorrow, and there's probably going to be a kid kind of standing off in the corner, maybe, like, sitting by himself or herself. And it's quite possible that you may get like a little knot in your stomach, or you may have your heart race a little bit faster. Or you may hear like this voice that says, go sit with that person. They're new, they're alone. Obviously, they don't have friends, or they'd be sitting by these friends. Be their friend, introduce yourself. You got the excuses, right? No, I like these kids I'm sitting with. This is my group. These are my people. These are my homies. Do they still use that word, homies? I hope not. It's like a 1980s pre-rap word. And, I'm on a tight schedule here, and I got to get to biology, and I don't have time to go make somebody new. They can meet friends for themselves. You come up with excuses for this, right? Like, even in the church, it happens. Like, I got a need for small group leaders. Like, we have more people that want to be in small groups than we have small group leaders, and that presents a problem. And I know I got small group leaders out there. I said, can you be a small group leader? And all of a sudden, the excuses come out. Well, I've been meeting with this group for 8 years, and these people are my best friends. And, I can't imagine not meeting on Sunday night or Tuesday morning with them. Those are the excuses. I'm too busy. That's an excuse. Well, I would say that there's people out there that want to experience that deep community that you're experiencing. There's people out there that want to experience what it means to be a disciple, but they need someone to lead them. Most of us will run into somebody at some point in our life that, maybe they're on a kid's sports team, and it's like a parent, and you can tell this woman's going through a really tough time, or you heard stories about her, or maybe it's somebody at work and you heard stories about him. And you feel that God is leading you or asking you to go offer a word of hope or a word of forgiveness, or just listen to the person and hear their story. But you got the excuses. I got the excuses too. Somebody knows them better than me. Somebody is more capable and equipped than what I am, so they can do it. Or what if I fail? Or what if I say something wrong and I send them down the wrong path? Like, those are the excuses that we come up with. So God answers. He answers Moses, and he answers all of us, like Moses, who make excuses. I will be with you. Now, that's all some of you need. Like, when we do this stuff, we're not alone. Like, God says, I'll be with you. For those of us who want more, here it is. And this is your sign, the sign that I am the one who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you'll worship God at this very mountain. I love part 2, but I'm going to talk about part 1 first here. And can we leave this slide up for a while? So the two things, thing number 1 is I will be with you. Now, this is consistent with my experience, and it's consistent with my observation of life, that God will be with us. Now, I believe this. I believe it, I've witnessed it, I've experienced it, that God's will is never going to take you where God's grace will not sustain you. So if God calls you to go sit by that new 7th grader that doesn't know anybody, I will be with you. He's never going to lead you to do something you're going to just make a complete fool of yourself and fail. God is with you. God's better than that. I know, I've learned the hard way in life and learned from my experience, don't make this mistake. I would rather be with God in the storm. I would rather be with God in the storm than without God in the sunshine. I would rather have this challenging, daunting task right in front of me and know that God is fully with me than be in great comfort and security without that promise. There is absolutely nothing like God's presence in life. There's going to be a cost to get to that place, but when you get there, there's nothing like it. There's been opportunities I've missed, and I could tell those stories all day. I want to tell you a story, though, of once where I found myself in the center of God's will. It was, I'm guessing 12 years ago, maybe 11, 13, 10, somewhere in there. And I remember it was a Saturday night. It was in the fall. I wasn't done with my sermon yet, if you can imagine that. And the phone rang. I answered the phone. It was a woman. She was distressed. She had talked about spousal abuse, and she felt she was in danger. She needed a bus ticket to get to Sioux Falls. There was a spouse abuse center there, a shelter. The ticket was $84. Now, I knew one or two things was going on. Either she's totally legit, and I couldn't get there fast enough with that money, or I'm being duped and I'm going to pay for somebody's party that night. I didn't take the chance. I went upstairs and got the $100, called a friend, asked him what he was up to. He said nothing. I knew he wouldn't be doing anything, so that's why I called him. We'll call him Fred, but his real name's Jay. Actually, I'll just call him Jay. That joke's kind of done with, I think. But so I picked him up. We went down to the 30th and Lake, where the woman was. Parked the car, met her. She looked distraught. She looked upset. She looked like she had better days. She looked like she had had better weeks. Gave her the $100. I was getting ready to pray for her, and there's 3 or 4 guys that came out, and they asked us what we were doing there. And I said, hey, I'm a pastor. I'm just out, walking the streets tonight praying with people. And he looked at me, and he said, you don't look like a pastor to me. I said, I get that enough from my own people. I don't need that here. Okay, I did not say that. I thought it'd be funny if I pretended like I did. So then he looked at Jay and he says, you don't look like a pastor. And Jay says, I'm a math teacher. So we left. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I paid for somebody's party that night. I could have very well done that. I'd put it at 50-50, but I would say even if there was a 1% chance that when that guy left and that woman had some clear opportunities to leave, she left, and she got on that bus. And she got on that bus for the first time in a long time. She slept in a safe bed that night. Now, you don't experience that without saying yes to something that's really uncomfortable. That was tough for me. I had knots in my stomach all night. That was tough. And I love what it says at the end of this verse, like, and this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. So, like, what we want is we want our sign before. It's like, okay, God, give me the sign that I should help this woman. I'm watching the TV, the football game's on, the words help this woman does not appear, so I stay there. I don't get that. My sign was when I gave her $100 and I looked in her eye, I think I saw a glimmer of hope that I didn't see before. You don't know if you're going to get that sign to go sit by that girl. But your sign is going to be when you see her laughing with some new friends a few weeks later. You don't know if you got that sign to lead that small group, but your sign is going to be when there's like 4 or 5 new couples around you like a month or 2 later, and you're all laughing and you all get to know each other, and they're experiencing the same thing that you used to experience in that other group. That's your sign. You don't get it now. You get it later. Now in verse 13, but Moses protested, so he's protested once, God's given him an answer. He's protesting again, this is what we do. If I go to the people of Israel and ask them, the Lord of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell him? So God was actually trying to trick, Moses was actually trying to trick God here, because Moses knew that God doesn't reveal God's name. He would have known that from the tradition of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. We make more excuses. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not good enough. There's somebody who's better than me. I don't have enough money. And God replies to Moses. God replies to us, I am who I am. That is the only time in the whole scriptures that God has ever revealed his name. Moses is the one who heard it. Say to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. Now in verse 17 we conclude, now go, I have promised to rescue you. So this is like for all of us right now, like you might be thinking of a person, like hopefully as I'm talking, like you're thinking of a person, you're thinking of a situation, you're thinking of an opportunity that God has probably led you to, because God's seen oppression, God has seen hurts, God has seen brokenness, and God needs you to do something about this. As I talk about this, just listen to this verse. I have promised to rescue you from your oppression in Egypt. He said the first 2 words, now go. I will lead you to the land that's flowing with milk and honey. So what's really cool with Moses is a number of things. Like without Moses saying yes, we wouldn't have the 10 Commandments. This is not like some dogmatic, rigid law. It's a gift to us that shows us as human beings how to order our lives in a way that makes sense. You're not going to be able to do this stuff alone. Moses taught us that as well. Remember when Jacob was fighting and when Moses would hold his arms up, Jacob and the Israelites would win, and he got so tired that he had to drop his arms, and Aaron was on one side of him and Hur was on the other, and they raised his arms up, and Joshua and the Israelites won the battle. Not because Moses did this by himself, but because Moses did this in connection with other people. Moses developed this amazing prayer life. Now, if you want an amazing prayer life, you're going to have to say no to security and comfort, and you're going to have to say yes. When God says, my people are oppressed, I need you to lead them out of this oppression. I love verse 33:11. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Wouldn't that be like this amazing prayer life? This is the prayer life I want. I'm guessing it's the one you want as well. The last thing is that Moses never made it to the promised land. He made it to the top of Mount Pisgah. So if you're standing on the top of Mount Pisgah, you can see the spacious land of Israel. You can see this land flowing with milk and honey. That was all the further that Moses made it. Like Abraham before him and Noah before that, not to mention a lot of other saints, this idea of Moses breathing his last breath up in the hills with sore feet and a tired back gives us the example that this life isn't always going to be easy. But you know what? Moses, Abraham, Noah, and a lot of people since, they wouldn't have had it any other way, and here's why. When Moses said yes to rescuing the people of Israel out of Egypt, he opened himself up to a whole new entire world. He opened himself up to this truth that you are better to have this daunting, challenging task in front of you with God fully present than comfort and security with no such promise. You know, Moses, he saw the face of God. He heard the name. He saw and experienced the glory, and he wouldn't have got that if he would have stayed working for his father-in-law as a shepherd. You know, he died on the top of Mount Pisgah as a burning bush of his own. So that when we hear this story, we are reminded of this brave and courageous man who said yes. Now, it took him a while to get there, and it takes us a while to get there. But when we get there, when we say no to the comforts and the securities of the world, and we say yes, the promises and the callings that God has for us, our world and the world will never be the same again. Now, here's where I want to challenge y'all. I do think that as I've been talking this morning, I just sense this, that many of you are thinking about some opportunities that you have right in front of you. I think there's some of you who are thinking about opportunities that you might perceive you have missed, and I would say it's maybe not too late. Be like Moses. Just trust fully in him. Cling on to this promise that God's will is never going to lead us, where God's grace will not sustain us. When we say no to the comfort and the security of this world, we are saying yes to God and his promises and experiencing the glory of God right here on earth. So let us pray. Almighty God, we come before you, and Lord, as I look out here this morning, I just see so many men and women. They're just examples and inspirations to people like me. Lord, I've seen their work over the last decade, and there's been so many times that they have said yes to you and your calling in their life. Lord, they've hosted small groups. They've given tens of thousands of dollars. They've served marginalized people right here in Omaha and Belize and Uganda, throughout the world. Lord, teach us again that we experience your glory, that we'll experience you most when we're following where you may lead us. Lord, I also sense that there's some of us out here that have had a lot of missed opportunities, and Lord, maybe we feel a little bit guilty right now, and God, we can't change the past, it's done. Lord, help us to live lives of forgiveness of self, and let us just learn lessons and hope for a better future. God, right now I know that there's names that are on people's hearts, and I pray because of our time of worship this morning that there's phone calls that are made, there's text messages that are sent, there's people that are listened to, there's gifts that are given, there's apologies that are made, whatever it is, Lord, to lead people out of the oppression they're experiencing into the spacious land that you offer to all of us children, this land flowing with milk and honey. So God, help us to write this better story. Help us to just ensure that the pages that are still to be written are pages where we use our influence to radically serve and invest in the thing that is most important to you, and that is your children. So God, we remember the one who came and gave everything for us. He taught us how to serve. He taught us how to love. He taught us how to forgive. He taught us how to forgive. And it's as we remember him in one voice, we pray together the prayer that he taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Today in We Kids, it was kind of cool because we talked about trusting in God too, and how no matter what it is we're going through, we can always trust in God. And I think it's really cool that our kids and our adults are coming together to learn about trusting in God. So whether it's a conversation you need to have with somebody, whether it's jumping in and going on a mission trip or joining a serving team, I challenge you today as you leave to trust in God's plan for you and trust that His will will never outweigh how His grace can sustain you. So before you leave today, just want to remind you of a couple of things. Our middle school and high schoolers will be having their mission trip meeting right after this service in the sanctuary. So even if you're brand new today and you're interested in going on a mission trip, that'll be here. And then if you are new to the Water's Edge, or maybe you've been here for a little while and you want to learn more about the Water's Edge, we invite you to join us for Starting Point in the kids' large group room. You'll enjoy a free lunch with us and be able to answer any questions or ask any questions you may have. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day, and we'll see you next Sunday at the Water's Edge.